Welcome to ShiftWatch. I'm your host, Starbuck. On this episode, today's energy shifts focus is on finally recognizing that I'm here to exchange the light codes I've received with others who resonate as ready. I recognized that physical sensation I got during my first few interactions with light beings, and it heightened my awareness of the light expansion in my aura. Now I see how it's attracted others to what's in my field, and I know about my obligation to share it with them once they recognize it. Over the last few weeks, there have been many people new to my circumstances that were compelled to connect after hearing me somewhere. Although unmistakably I channel higher wisdom these days, I don't see myself as a channeler, and therefore had to go through the process of connecting with new people, ready to receive what I was carrying before I would comprehend the actual transmission. More than one told me after a few days of assimilating the session, they experienced a variety of purges, followed by an elevated level of peace and familiarity with higher dimensional aspects. They shared what their expectations were on going into the session based on past channeling experiences they had sought out. Those sessions were guided meditations led by a facilitator of some repute to either connect with higher energies or astral travel to some destination. That shaped their perception of what was going to take place between us. The sessions I'm guided to facilitate, I believed, are meant to be exchanges to satisfy curiosities about dimensional phenomenon. And yet, as each one confirmed, some other light code download had been exchanged at the end that they received from me. I know what these codes are, what purpose they serve, when I received them, with the promise that they would blossom when the time was right. Clearly, we've reached that place on the timeline. Next, in space weather, I had prepared to share current startling evidence of the weakening magnetic field from Ben at Suspicious0bservers and the resulting extreme weather. This one marks a tornado this past week that looked more like a Cat 5 hurricane echo. Then on Wednesday, just before this recording was about to render, multiple Earth-facing CMEs began sprouting. And so I'll lead this section with that. Then, in vibration matching, beyond Earth sentience, now that I have a firm grasp of interstellar conveyances, what they look like, and the beginnings of contact with them, past evidence of this kind of activity within Earth's atmosphere is becoming recognized. Some of you have heard and seen footage from NASA's STS-75 mission flight logs from 1996. Here's a recording of that interstellar conveyance traffic. They do compare with the kinds of vehicles I've seen. And finally, in this PS feature, I share David Wallace on infinite star connections with Viviane Chauvet and Jeff Demmers. I was fortunate enough to spend 3 days with Dave just about a year ago when he shared in full his 2017 experience with me one-on-one. It took all that time to assimilate all his writings and collection of artist renderings describing the timeline. Among the things that happened during his visit included an accidental head injury and the consequential healing that he sustained. Here's a clip from his interview with Viviane Chauvet and Jeff Demmers on their Infinite Star podcast, where Dave describes what happened along with the resulting imaging of the repair to his skull.
Okay, good. All right, let me tell it that I got it. Okay, good. Yeah, and it was funny because I did not know, I know it was under the guise of an ascension consultation, but I didn't know what was going to take place. And I just figured that once we got, online with each other, that we would suss it out. We would begin to talk and then we would figure it out.
You're the third person in the last 2 weeks that crossed my path in exactly the same way. Now, whatever triggered them to get here in the first place, the result was always the same. And I learned something about myself. Look, when I go into these things, although I've learned and I appreciate, yes, I channel information now from higher aspects, but I don't present myself as a channeler. So, that's not who I think I am. So when we get into these sessions with others, there's definitely some kind of exchange that takes place, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And the last one that I went through, and it was same circumstances. I suggested we record it so you can listen to it later. She has a family, and they're still getting used to the idea of any of this at
Yeah.
all. And so that's not an environment where she feels open to have these discussions. And at the end, she sent me an email a few days later, and it said, it took me a few days to assimilate what had happened between us. And since then, my mind has gone in different directions and it's been overly active. And I had to mindfully kind of meditate to come down. It wasn't until 3 days later that I put all this into perspective that recently I had an ascension consult, and it was a channeling experience.
Mhm.
And then after that, but before we were on, I had an ascension to Telos, kind of consult. And so I thought that our experience was you were going to take me through something. That's clearly not what you did. And yet, when all this was over, something was left in my field that I picked up on. And the whole thing resonated with me. So it was just dear for me to hear that, because I'd never been able to put in terms with, okay, what is it that you do for me when we get in these sessions together? I can't tell you. All I can tell you really now is that there is an energy exchange that takes place.
Mhm.
And I know I carry codes that
Mhm.
you're supposed to pick up on. You will. Um, and it's just the next piece in your puzzle, in my mind, to kind of connect the dots on where I'm heading. Sooner or later, our tribe shows up,
Mm.
and when they hear your stories, they offer a perspective that you certainly hadn't considered, but that makes sense. And so that's what I find in these exchanges.
Good morning, folks. Well, what can I say? After this video, I'm going to the store for supplies. Now we have a quadruple impact coming. Amidst the 10 X-class solar flares over the last few days, 4 strong CMEs are currently on their way to Earth. Yesterday was the first time in 7 years I had to make 3 separate videos in one day. We started the morning with 1 CME on the way. By midday it was 2 and maybe a third, and last night we shared the data indicating that for sure there were 3 CMEs on their way here. In this video, we will see the 4th, another X-class solar flare releasing towards the Earth. These eruptions are full halo coronal mass ejections of plasma from the solar flares. All 3 will hit this weekend. The last one, from the last and largest flare you see here on the X-ray flux chart, occurred this morning. Hard to miss, and the same coronal rippling outward from the shockwave of the blast can be seen. Folks, the stereo A coronagraph isn't as pretty, but it does often update faster. That is the 4th full halo event from this morning. Only the first frame, 1 image is updated on Soho, but so far, it also appears to show that full halo eruption. And that makes 4. The Enlil spiral is lagging behind the most. Only the first 2 events are shown. But whoa, that's a powerful impact. Extreme density and very fast plasma speed, and don't forget, they're going to need to add 2 more to this model. We do indeed have 4 CMEs heading this way, and the geomagnetic storms will be strong. I'll modify the forecast I gave last night, which will still need to be updated again when the Endless spirals get all 4 events on there. We should take level 3 or 4 storms, KP 7 or 8, and I have very strong confidence in that. The sun woke up today and chose violence. multiple eruptions directed at Earth, and this is the initial analysis of those solar flares. To begin, here is today's X-ray flux, and it is the two longer duration flares we're focused on, as they are what release the coronal mass ejections. Bright active regions centered here, you will see two eruptions. The coronal ripple outwards and faint plasma ejection are visible for both events. Watching closely here, we've got one, and then there goes the second one there. The coronagraph differentials are up next. First eruption is clearly a full halo CME here, and even though the data is slowly coming in on the second, we can see that there is also a full halo event to that one. This means that both are likely heading this way. Now, only the first one is updated on the endless spiral, and it appears the coronagraph analysis is correct. NOAA forecasts a direct impact of high density and moderately high plasma speed late on the 10th. That would be Friday afternoon or evening for those in the US and Canada. And of course, they should be updating to put the second eruption on here in the coming hours. But wait, there is more. In just the last few minutes, one of the plasma filaments on the north erupted as an M-class flare occurred at the sunspots. This one also has a very good chance to be Earth-directed. So folks, we definitely have two CMEs heading this way, and possibly a third. It is safe to say that the KP index is going to be rising as they impact over the weekend. We'll be checking updates in the coming hours, but I would expect a KP of between 6 and 7, and if the third one is aimed our way as well, it could reach KP 8. While we watch for more flares, folks, a very minor solar wind enhancement arrived at Earth yesterday and once again produced way more geomagnetic activity than it should have. Plasma speed barely cracked 500 kilometers per second with modest density, but we got a level 3 geomagnetic storm condition that persisted for 6 hours. Folks, it's appropriate that as it was happening, we released this video on all the excess space weather effects we've been taking from minor to modest solar activity. As many of you watched it, another such event was unfolding here at the Earth. Perhaps the phi angle flip during the impact allowed it to have a bit more gusto, but it shouldn't have been this significant. This is way too much. No way we should have taken such a geomagnetic storm from this small of space weather. The magnetic pole shift and weakening of Earth's magnetic field strikes again. This, on the other hand, was real. I've seen hundreds of tornadoes on radar. I know what a bow echo looks like. This vortex on radar is something I have never seen before. Tornadoes don't usually continue producing that recognizable vortex up through the cloud layer. It's definitely not normal. However, I'm not quite enough of a tornado expert to say this is a brand new thing. This intensification of singular events is exactly what I was discussing in the afternoon video earlier this week, and the fact that we need to be on the lookout for such things right now is definitely part of the process. Now, luckily, this tornado happened kind of out in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, and there isn't much more information on this event. We have no definitive conclusion, but at least this was something, a powerful tornado, and it may have been more than just something. Lastly, folks, speaking of a lack of certainty, we still don't have definitive answers on this morning's CME. And CMEs are often hard to judge. All of our data is in 2D, but we need a 3D perspective to make a judgment call about an impact. Endless spirals show nothing related to this event as of now. But here's the best we can do. Recall the event erupted just on the Earth-facing side of the Sun, near the limb, just slightly south of the solar equator. The CME is now fully visible on SOHO, and just as with this morning, we can say most of the blast is going to miss, but we could take a glancing blow off the edge of the eruption. First thing I do is I draw a center line. The eruption is visible to the left of the line, meaning a more than 90-degree expanse southward, and nearly 90 degrees northward as well. A similar analysis can be made with a tilted line, and it does look like we can call it a nearly 180-degree blast. If that is the case all around the CME plasma cloud, then we will be taking a glancing blow. I'd say I give it about a 50-50 shot, and if it does hit, we are likely to get low-level geomagnetic storms. We won't know that until Friday night or Saturday morning.
Okay, it's in the bogan arm now, and I'm trying to track with the arms sort of semi-rigid.
Pretty good job, Jeff.
And this is at full zoom.
Yes, we can see the suggestion of the tether on the right side, unless that's just a reflection on the window panes.
Yeah, I could definitely see the tether in the viewfinder. Unfortunately, it was at a very low angle through the window, and so there's a lot of distortion in the image.
Copy.
We have acquisition out the front window. I'm going to go and take some more pictures of that.
Roger. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, Houston, we got contact. It's beautiful. We're going to get it on the TVs and downlink to you. We can see the tether.
Great news, Franklin, and we'll look for that picture.
In the image?
Franklin, we see a long line, a couple of star-like things, and a lot of things swimming in the foreground. Can you describe what you're seeing?
Well, the long line is a tether, and there's a little bit of debris that kind of flies with us, and it's illuminated by the sun at such low angles. So there's a lot of stray light, and it's getting washed out quickly, but Claude is trying to do a quick, good job here adjusting the cameras.
Copy that.
Houston, Columbia, I was using both the 20 power binoculars and the 400 millimeter Nikon lens under the body bag, and it only just disappeared in the glare of the sun about 30 seconds ago. The tether looked completely straight. I did not see any bright spots along the tether except at the very bottom where there was a bright spot which was unresolvable for me. I did not see anything above the satellite.
Thank you. We copy all, Jeff. Good observations. We look forward to your descriptions and photography when you get back.
On the terraform Brocoli planet was that Weimer, my deck guide, who put me in my special chair, is a very tall yellow man. Weimer was holding my hand, and when he took me out of the chair because I had vertigo. There you go. So that lateral gash is actually a healed, crushed cranium. And this is the superior view taken of my cranium by the radiologist when I was returned. You see, I had a big gap on my cranium. And so it wasn't revealed to me through the information package that, through the information package that what had happened was I had fallen off the ramp in my zeal to see this beautiful white citadel that all these giant ships were landing at, I yanked away from Weimer's hand on this massive 100-foot long landing ramp. And there was all kinds of species holding hands in disembarkation. And I went right off the side of the ramp, and I fell almost 100 feet, landed right on my elbow and right on my head. And it punched a piece of cranium down into my brain. This is where I was whisked off to the Chauvet doctor. He put a device on my forehead called a curla, which is an oblong hollow gold box with many hundreds of tiny little engravings on the sides of it that were embedded with a different colored gemstone. And the little symbols looked like Sanskrit. The front of the curla device, which went right over my forehead and covered the top of the bridge of my nose and rose above my head some inches, had a starburst on the front. And when you push the button, it activates, and all these lights flash. There's thousands of flashing colored lights is what you see. And after 15 or 20 minutes, he had regrown my brain material, and the piece of bone went back into place. And he had transferred all the memories that were stored by my left hemisphere, turned them around, turned them upside down, and restacked them in the right hemisphere, which was damaged. He said, well, that's the most elegant suture I've ever seen in my life. He says, you show no cerebral scarring, and there's no bone scarring. When did you have brain surgery? And so this is what I talked about the last time we were on together, and I was petitioning the hospital for this photograph. So when I told him finally, because he really pushed me to give him the answer of where this happened. Well, when I told him what happened, he used very bad, colorful language, and he deleted the pictures from the screen and said, get the F out of here. And so it took me 4 years since having that MRI scan done to get the picture. So that's a completely healed, severe cranial fracture. It's what's known as a bone-crushing, life-altering fracture.
Wow.
And so it was healed within moments by this little man on Broccoli. And so this was part of my experience. And so I was taken away to another place to keep an eye on me for a day or two to make sure that I came back to normal. And I was put into a quad where there was picnic benches and a little room for me to sleep in. And there was other people just like me who were there for various reasons. Some of them were there to live for the rest of their lives because they asked to stay. So anyways, let's go to one of the other pictures there, Jeff. So there it is, you guys. I promised there would be a picture someday, and there it is. So that's from the brain surgery I received. And that's because I fell off the stupid landing ramp, the disembarkation ramp. What an